Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Freedman, Matt F. the Oracle. Welcome to the Betting Pros podcast, brought to you by BetMGM, where you can get a risk-free bet of up to $1,000 when you use the highly original promo code BettingPros with your first deposit. All right, here with me to talk NFL Week 14 market movement and power ratings, as well as Thursday Night Football, is Kevin Cole, host of the excellent Unexpected Points podcast. It's probably my favorite podcast. The proprietor of the new Unexpected Points newsletter, which everyone should subscribe to, and the Lord of the Adjusted Scores. Kevin, you were on the show in week 4. I guess 10 weeks is evidently the longest I can go without talking with you with the microphone in front of my face. Thanks for returning to the show.
Hey, great to be back, Matt. It's been a while here. So I was sitting by the phone, as we all sit by our phones that we don't have anymore, that we just sit by waiting for your call until this point. So now I can breathe again, and I'm here and I'm ready.
All right. Well, since you were last on the show, what are the analytical things that you were working on? Anything new that you've got cooking up?
New. Well, there's a little bit breaking news here. For those who do not follow me on the Twitter bot, which is probably everyone there, I am no longer at PFF. So that's a little bit of a new news. And I have started, as all great thought leaders across this nation, my own Substack, just because I really don't have any idea what I'm going to do here in week 13 going forward. So I've already published a couple things on there. I have the adjusted score stuff, which I just discussed via my podcast before, which will hopefully be continuing in the near future, that I'm now publishing a little bit more of that stuff on the Substack. I put everything out for week 13 there. I made available a Google Sheet that everyone can get to that has all of the adjusted scores and the relevant metrics for the entire season. And then we'll continue to update that as the season's going on. So I've heard, and I use it myself for some betting related stuff, and I've heard from some other people that they find it useful to try to get a little bit of an adjustment for some of the high variance types of plays, fumble luck recovery, things like that, to get a better gauge of team strength.
Yeah, I like that. And I mean, I listen to the pod every week, and that is a general way in which I use it, because I have my power ratings and they are numbers driven, but there is an override element to it. And so I'll always listen to what you have to say, think about the ways in which I want to adjust or not adjust the different power ratings that I have. So yeah, everyone be sure to check that out at Kevin's Substack, Unexpected Points, right?
Unexpectedpoints.substack.com, correct. Or, check me out on Twitter. Goddamn Elon won't allow me to change my handle. So if you're listening, I'm sure you are, can we open it up here? Because I'm verified. Don't ask me how that even happened in the first place. But the verification process, I guess they're too worried about impersonation going on right now in some sort of way. So now that I'm verified, I can't change my name. It doesn't really matter. My name wouldn't change. But I can't change my handle also. And at PFF, as part of the ritualistic ceremony, when you become a person, an employee at PFF, they the whole bloodletting, all that stuff goes on. And then they also force you to change your handle and put PFF in there somewhere. So now I'm stuck with that, even though I'm no longer at the company.
Do you have the
PFF? Sorry, I didn't even say the
PFF. Do you have the PFF brand or the PFF tattoo on you anywhere, or were you able to escape that?
It's actually a digital implant. There's something I have to have that removed also as part of the process.
All right. Well, moving on to what happened in week 13. Some teams that moved up in the power ratings for me. And let me just open up my spreadsheet. Here the Bengals. Big win over the Chiefs there. So they've moved up an entire point for me in the power ratings. The Eagles, big win over the Tennessee Titans. Although, they've moved up a point for me, but it's debatable as to like how quote unquote real the Titans are.
Right.
And then the Lions, they moved up a decent amount for me. Not so much because I think they're actually a good team, but I think they are in the upper class of that middle tier of kind of subpar teams. You know what I mean? They might be like the best of the not good teams. And so I've moved them up a decent amount in my power ratings since last week. Kevin, any thoughts on those teams, the Bengals, the Eagles, the Lions, and then any other teams that kind of caught your eye as ones that have changed in your perspective since last week because of what we saw?
Yeah, I mean, so for the Bengals, luckily for me, it's more of a confirmation of where I had them in my power rankings as
Yeah.
opposed to moving them up. I mean, they did move up slightly, and they're actually third now in my power rankings, which is probably a little high, having them above Philly and having above Dallas. But like I said, they were already very high. I think they were in the fifth slot before, and then they jumped over those two, having beaten the team that I previously had as number one, the Kansas City Chiefs. So they're up there. I mean, I have Philly at number 4, where they've been 3 or 4 for a while now. I do think it helps solidify what they did last week defensively. They just completely wiped out Tennessee. I mean, they lost Traylon Burks early, the Titans, but also if you look at their success rate in that game, it was a sub 30% success rate, which is just a really, really strong effort for them. They weren't based on, fluky plays or anything like that. Whereas the Cowboys destroyed the Colts, but it was a 2-point game fairly late in this one,
Yeah.
and then the floodgates just completely burst open in the second half there. And the Lions I have at 19th, which still might be a little bit low, honestly, for the perception that I have on them. I might even move them up a little bit more, but they are someone who's been, rapidly on the rise. They were a team that was unlucky to start the season and now has been pretty good the last few weeks. Although the one question would be, strength of schedule, competition that they've had so far during this run hasn't been that strong, but you can only beat who's in front of you.
Yeah. So I have the Lions number 18. I have them half a point below average team on a neutral field. What you said there earlier,
I'm
the
exactly half
team,
a point too. Hey,
yeah,
we're like
lockstep
we're
here.
mind
Yeah.
meld going on here. Okay, go
No,
ahead.
you mentioned the team you previously had number 1 as the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm assuming now, powers of deduction that I have,
Yeah.
that you move them to number 2 and that the Bills are now number 1.
No. Now the Minnesota Vikings are number 1 because they're 10-2. So
My mistake. My mistake. I didn't know who I was
yeah,
talking to. No.
the Bills are number 1, roughly 0.3 points above Kansas City. So they're kind of still in a tier of their own, the top 2.
Yeah. So I have Cincinnati at number 5. And for me, you mentioned for you, it was more of like a confirmation of where you already had them.
Yeah.
For me, it's kind of moving above the tier of Miami, Baltimore, as now 49ers at this point, 49ers dropping out. And so, every other team is kind of moving up because of that. But I still have Dallas and Philly a little bit above Cincinnati. I don't know.
I think,
Cincinnati,
I mean, that's more in line with
yeah,
where the markets were. That's basically what it was. It was the top 2. It was the next 3, I guess, like
yeah,
the 3 NFC teams, and then it was this large kind of messy tier underneath there where you could have had the Ravens or the Bengals maybe at number 1 in that tier. Maybe Miami, if you really like Miami. My numbers don't like Miami or the Ravens as much. So all those guys were in the mix to be the head of that tier. But I do think, like you said, via the markets now, and we've seen the market movement on next week's games, that the Bengals have definitely gotten that bump, approaching now that larger second tier, at the bottom of the second tier according to the markets.
certainly. And I will say that there's a chance, based on where the market has moved, that I didn't move Cincinnati high enough.
Yeah.
And I probably need to adjust to catch up a little bit with that. The teams that move down for me, and move down the most, and this is fairly obvious and quarterback driven. You have San Francisco, drop them 4 points, and honestly, maybe that's not enough. I feel like it probably isn't enough because I know you are one of the original Jimmy Garoppolo truthers. I can't claim that status, but I've liked him quite a bit. Like, within the confines of what he's been asked to do over the past half decade within the 49ers offense, he has executed very well. And I think going from him to a 7th round, 3rd string, Mr. Irrelevant rookie, I think, like, at the most optimistic, we would expect a 4-point drop off, but maybe it's more like 7.
We'll
So
see. I don't think the
yeah,
markets, though, are pricing that in, but it's tough to tell because I guess we'll have to see. I remember I was looking last night, and I think it might have reflected the fact that Tampa Bay just looked like such poop, basically,
yeah,
for like 95% of that game, that the movement was not that much, post injury, in the line on that one. I also think San Francisco's defense is just more and more power is being built into that side of the power rankings also. So maybe it's a combination of those two, but it doesn't seem like the market's pricing in more than, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 points. I think the market is kind of between the Garoppolo haters who are like, you just plug anyone into the Shanahan supercomputer and it works, and maybe where you and I stand on him.
Yeah. Well, the look ahead was 6.5.
Okay.
And now it's 3.5. So the market is saying 3 points. And I think that's pretty generous. I don't know. Or I think that's underselling the impact of Garoppolo.
Yeah, it all depends on what the numbers you're going through and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah. No, I think you're right. Although, there might also be a little bit of a feeling, and we'll see how the running back situation is working out there. Christian McCaffrey's health, all that sort of stuff, is that maybe they'll just lean more into the running attack also as part of it. I guess the numbers I was looking at was more like a 2-point movement, but maybe they'd already priced in some of this Garoppolo that I didn't realize it.
Yeah. So another one here that I dropped down. This is more of like a kind of like technical accounting thing, but bumping the Rams down. And so this was just sort of like moving Stafford from kind of like short term not on the team to long term for the rest of the season not on the team. So now at this point, I have the Rams as the number 31 team in the power ratings. Obviously they're bad. It's the question of like, how bad are they? Do you think this version of what we've seen out of the Rams, do you think they are worse than the Texans?
No.
No one's worse than the Texans.
I don't know. I really hate these quarterback changes and everything else that's going on here. My very like unanalytical thing with the Rams, even a couple of weeks ago when Stafford had his first concussion, right before he came back, was like, are they just going to pack it in? Are we going to see packing him in? And we didn't see that. I don't know if that's a rivalry type of thing with the Seahawks, and maybe now we will see the true packing in. But for that factor, I would not put them below the Texans. But I'll tell you, like, if you just look at my non-adjusted rankings for the Rams, so it has all that Stafford in there, they're still 24th. I feel like they were just bad. There's a bad team even with Stafford. So I don't know. I mean, it's not, we're not looking at, spectacular backup play, but I do think the fact that, Wolford or Perkins or whoever, they can move a little bit. So maybe that helps. The defense at least has talent on there if they haven't quit yet. I don't know. They're a real tough one for me to peg down.
Yeah, and then one more. I didn't put it in the outline, but the Baltimore Ravens. It seems increasingly likely that they will be without Lamar Jackson this week, and so I haven't bumped them down in the longer term power ratings for the season, but in the short term power ratings for this week, I've dropped them down. I believe like 4.5, 5 points. Any thoughts on the Ravens and kind of what you make that team to look like without Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, the offense was starting to stagnate somewhat even with Lamar Jackson. The first couple of weeks, we saw explosive passing plays down the field, explosive runs, and that was really what the offense was based on. So we knew that was going to regress somewhat. Then you had the injuries to Rashad Bateman, who had produced, a handful of those explosive plays. You had Lamar Jackson maybe not getting loose quite as often as he had before. And then the offense was, stagnating. There were some signs that it might pick back up after Andrews came back from injury there. And now we have we're flipping over here with Tyler Huntley in there. I don't know. I guess it's just based on this is not a vibe based thing. I think people get good vibes from Huntley, maybe because his QB wins have been okay when he's come in there or he's looked functional. But I'm just not buying it. I don't know if you remember, but when Jackson had missed some time in previous seasons, there was kind of a talk as if Tyler Huntley could be a starter in the NFL. And I don't know. I just don't see that at all. And I feel like they have won or been highly competitive in games, very low scoring, kind of grinded out type of games when Huntley has been there. And that can work for a while, but I would say 4 points, 5 points is plenty good enough for me, with my frame of reference being, I think the biggest movement I've ever seen is maybe 7 or 8 points with Aaron Rodgers being replaced by Tyler Huntley back in the day. Mm-hmm. So that's I think that's fair, 4 or 5. I think there
might have been, sorry, who was it that you just said right there? Aaron
Rodgers and Brett Hundley. Sorry, not Tyler Huntley. I got Tyler on my mind. Yeah. This was back in 2019. Was that
Yeah.
what it was? No. 2000 and 2000 whenever. No, 2000. I don't remember when it was, but whenever Rodgers was out for a game or two and Huntley came in, I remember because it was painful because I was like a little bit of a Brett Huntley truther, and it did not go well.
Yeah, I think there was also pretty big movement last year on
For Jordan Love too.
for Aaron
Yeah,
Rodgers
I'm
to
sure there
Jordan Love.
was.
Yeah. So this line was Baltimore -4.
Yeah.
And now as we're talking, it has moved all the way to 2.5 plus 2.5 for Baltimore. So, and obviously going through 0, it's not that big of a deal to cross through 0 if you don't get to the key number of 3, but that's significant movement there.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Any other teams that kind of caught your eye in terms of like downward perception changes from last week to this week?
I mean, one that I flagged here, but we kind of talked about the Lions a little bit already. And it's not, again, it's not like, it's not important because it's through the 0, but it's just funny to me that the Lions, at least when I checked last night, were favored against the Minnesota Vikings. I mean, it went from 2, at least on my numbers that I was looking at, opening at 2.5 towards the Vikings to 1.5 in Detroit. And again, like that doesn't really matter, but I just think it's fun to troll Vikings fans with, basically.
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about kind of getting into the market movement part of the show. Yeah, let's start with that game. It's really interesting in that, Minnesota, the people who were into Minnesota, I guess we'll call them Vikings fans, but Vikings fans, they're, it's like their team, I think they know that their team is, I don't want to say it's bad. It's not, it's like it's above average, but they know their team is not elite. But they feel like they need to pretend that
I think they're pretty close to average, quite honestly. I think that's one of the so here's Vikings fan. Well, not Vikings fans, but here's judging by comments on YouTube / Twitter, which of course are the elite of the elite of thought leaders. Talk about thought leaders in the platform. Vikings fans, they were doing really well. I was saying they weren't that good. They were like, yeah, you're right. We're not that good. Then they beat the Bills. And then when that happened, it was like, you got to respect us sort of thing. Like those people came out and then, it didn't go so hot the next week against Dallas. So I don't know where they stand right now. I still think they probably want their respect, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta say, I'm capitulating a little bit on this, and that on the look ahead line, I did bet Detroit at +3 because there was a rogue book out there that hung a +3, and it was like, okay, I got to take this, but I'm looking at this now, looking at the projection, and I think it's gone too far. Like Minnesota +2.5, that is too far. I have to say, like I have this projected as Minnesota close to a pick 'em, like Minnesota favored by 0.25 points. I don't know if you have an opinion on this in terms of where this line should be, but 2.5 Minnesota as an underdog, that is too far.
Yeah, I mean, I have it basically as a pick. I mean, maybe you could lean a little bit towards Detroit. It depends. Like I've been messing with like how much I'm decaying some of the older games as part of this. So that's really the knob, right? If I'm decaying like the past results earlier in the season a little bit more so, then it will give me Detroit by maybe half a point or a point, but it doesn't even really matter around there, right? And then if not, then it's more like a pick. So it's pretty close though to being a pick, assuming you give something for home field advantage in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it should be close to a pick, but if I think it's close to a pick in the team that has, I don't want to say like the better record, but like the team that has the better quarterback,
they know how to win at the end. They know how to win.
Yeah, okay, we'll give them the know how to win, but the team that has the better quarterback with probably maybe the better head coach. I mean, I think just in terms of maybe not in-game decision making, but in terms of pre-game planning, I would say they have the better head coach. And I can get that team as an underdog. I'm probably going to do it anyway. So yeah,
there you go. Just get it on both sides there. Yeah, I mean, I would not be against that at all. I don't know what to make of the Vikings because I actually have them. Like I said, I have them right around average. So I'm probably a little bit lower than some others. Let me look to see what the kind of a market-based rating would be on them.
Let's see. I have them
right now.
As 1.25 points better than an average team on a neutral field. And I have them at number 11.
Okay, according to Predictable, if anyone has looked there, where they look at this line and then the look ahead line for the next week, and they figure out the relative strengths based upon that, they have Minnesota as Let me look here. Sorry, this is not great podcasting here. Half a point better than an average team on a neutral field.
Yeah.
It still
You
gets
know,
them all the way up to 11th, though, in the
yeah.
rankings, because there's not a lot of separation, between 11 and 15
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
here.
So I'm a little bit higher in terms of the actual number attributed to it, but I have them at number 11. Okay, one game we have to talk about:
Have to.
Cincinnati hosting the Browns. And so if you look at the preseason numbers, and great, I'll say, like, there was a lot of uncertainty in the offseason about, Deshaun Watson's availability. And so that would factor into the line here. But in the look ahead offseason line, this was Bengals favored by 1.5. On the Thursday look ahead, so not even a week ago, this number was 3.5. The early line opened Sunday night at 4.5, and it is now 6. And by the way, I bet this on Monday at 4.5, and I logged it. Here comes the plug. I logged it in the BettingPros app, where you can sync up with sportsbooks, get free betting advice and picks, and track different experts and your own bets. And you can set alerts. We monitor all the major sportsbooks, so when one of them has a line move that hits a threshold you set, you get an alert that tells you where to make a bet at the book that provides the most value. So download the app today in the Apple or Google Play Store. Okay, so this number has moved from 3.5 just a week ago to 6 here. Kevin, what are your thoughts on this line move? And kind of, we talked about the Bengals earlier, but the Browns also played their first game with Deshaun Watson. Any thoughts on the Browns here?
Yeah. The Browns were another team that my numbers liked for most of the season, meaning if you were going to, calculate what their point differential would have been, or what their, record would have been based upon how I looked at the underlying strength of how they played in some of these games, like the Jets game just being an absolutely absurd, like 0.001%
a lot of
type.
adjusted wins for them.
Yeah, exactly. They had a lot of adjusted wins, similar to the Bengals in that sort of manner, but it hasn't been as hot recently. And the defense is just, I don't know. It's weird because they had like a great game against the Bengals, as being one team, when everyone was like really in jumping off of liking Joe Burrow and everyone else there, and they couldn't do anything with Jamar Chase. But then they have other times where they look like they just cannot stop anybody. I'm rambling a bit here, but just Deshaun Watson was really bad last week. He was bottom 5. Somehow they put up whatever it was, 20-something points without scoring an offensive touchdown, which was impressive. Hat tip to the Texans on that one. But I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it's like riding a bike when they talk about playing quarterback if you haven't played for 2 years, but I tend to think that it's not something you need a lot of lead time going forward on. So I don't know. At 6 points, I would probably lean towards that being a little bit too big of a margin for this type of game, with the Deshaun Watson factored in as giving them a boost. But it's close. But I think according to my numbers, I'd lean pretty heavily in that direction. But I guess maybe intellectually, I'm hedging that a bit.
Yeah. So I bet the 4.5 minus 4.5 on Monday, mainly as a market move. Like, I just anticipated that this number was going to move to 6.
That sounds about fair
and
from what my numbers say. 4.5 sounds pretty close. 4.5. Yeah.
I have it projected at 5. So like now with this number at 6, I'm seeing value on Cleveland. I don't think I would bet it though. But
this is a tough one too. Yeah. It's like you don't even have, you have no frame of reference, right? No real to go off of on what to do in these types of situations.
Yeah. So mentioned the Browns there. Of course, in week 13, they played the Texans, who just were absolutely terrible. Kyle Allen just gifting touchdowns to the defense.
Is this a tank job? What's up with this Kyle Allen stuff? Because I mean, obviously it wasn't like Davis Mills was, covering himself in glory or anything, but it's been so bad. It's been so bad.
I don't know. I mean, well, then you're getting to the larger question: was hiring Lovie Smith part of the tank? Was it a secret tank? Yeah, I mean, so you've got this game, Houston going on the road, playing the Cowboys. In the offseason, this number was 8, Cowboys favored by 8. So the market already knew, months in advance, that the Texans were likely to be heavy underdogs in the spot as a really bad team. Of course, the market did not anticipate just how bad the Texans would be, and maybe how good the Cowboys would be. A week ago in the look ahead market, this was 14.5. It opened 16.5 on Sunday, and now as we're recording this, it is straight on 17. And the real question: does this number get higher? Like, how how high does this number have to get before reasonable people in the market think, okay, this is just too much, I have to bet on the Houston Texans as a matter of principle? I think that number would have to be like in the 20s before people would really before serious bettors would be like, okay, this number's too far. As a matter of principle, I must bet on the road dog in this spot. Kevin,
Well,
what are your thoughts here?
Well, you should have booked a serious bettor on the podcast if you wanted to have that, because I'll tell you, 17 is looking pretty good to me right now, honestly. But I have gone down in flames on these types of bets many a time, and I seem to, I don't know if it's one of those things where like you have a bias towards the losses hurting more or not, but I seem to think like these don't go well. But I always do it for some reason when it comes in, because my number will come in. I don't know, what is it at here? It's at like 13.5 or something like that. Now, what's the Kyle Allen factor? I don't know. 13.5. Like Dak Prescott. I feel like the Cowboys are a little bit overhyped right now. I mean, whatever. It's hard to say overhyped because they're playing well, but their offense, again, people are like, everything's clicking with Dak. Yeah, it's going okay. It's going well. I don't know if it's right there. Texas defense is not super horrible. I mean, it's pretty bad, but it's really the offense that's that bad. I don't know. I guess I would probably at 17, it's pretty tough for me to pass up. But again, it's just you're gonna feel like an idiot when it doesn't hit, which is gonna happen, half the time, probably. A little bit less than half the time is all I'm hoping for.
Yeah, I have this at 16.5. I gotta say, if you were in your next job, if you were hired as a trader, an odds maker for BetMGM, by the way, of course, use the highly original promo code BettingPros with your first deposit for the risk-free bet of up to $1,000. If you were at BetMGM and you posted a line of 13.5, you would take so much Cowboys money like within a matter of seconds of posting that line.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's probably wrong, too. Don't get me. I think that's probably wrong. Like, I'd have to go in there and adjust it. But I don't know if I could get that much higher than maybe 15 on here. But I mean, this is, yeah, I don't know. It's really, I have trouble. I don't know if you do, but I have trouble when we start to get out to these extremes because you can't really capture, because it's like the tails, right? If we're talking about the distribution,
right,
the tails can get so long in certain circumstances. People don't necessarily, maybe they realize it on the top end that like the Bills and the Chiefs or whoever can be so much better than everyone else. But there can also be teams at the bottom that are just so much worse than everyone else. And there's also something which I have not brought into play so far this season, which maybe I should have, was like a tanking variable, which I normally only try to allocate for the last few weeks of the season. But the Texans may have kicked it into full tank in week 11 or something, like whatever. What did Allen come in? Week 12 might have been the full tank. Maybe I should be putting that variable on, which will add a few points.
Yeah, I think that would be. I mean, if you add the few points to your 13.5, like that gets you there. That gets you right to around the market. So that it might be worth doing. All right, another game here. The game that has been flexed into the Sunday Night Football spot. You have Miami on the road against the Chargers. This number in the preseason, or in the offseason rather, was Miami as a 5.5 point underdog. And then now, of course, we've had the full flip on the look ahead market on Thursday. This was 1.5. The early line was 2.5 on Sunday. And now, as we're recording, we are seeing threes across the market. Miami favored by 3. Kevin, is this too far?
It's close. I mean, I still not too far for me, but my numbers are pretty low on the Chargers so far. And I think for Miami, even when they got beat down by the 49ers, and this is something where I got some dunking quote tweets on Twitter about the fact that I was trying to point out, and of course, like, even if you put explicitly in your write-up, you're like, I know you can't just exclude the bad plays, but it's an interesting thought exercise. Then everyone gets back to you and they're like, oh, if you exclude Tua's bad plays, then he was actually good. But my larger point was, I know it was based on a couple of long touchdowns that he had, but they kind of do that on a regular basis, though, for that team. So I give them a little bit more credit than I would your normal team that does that. But my larger point was that, like, if you say fumble 6 is like incredibly negative, and fairly random. Like, I don't care how good your defensive rush is. You're not going to necessarily scoop and score on something like that. And he had some kind of back-breaking interceptions, and then also looking at some accuracy numbers. He was a little bit inaccurate. Maybe he was rattled in the pocket. I don't know what was going on there. But I thought, like, internally, he actually wasn't that bad. It was more like a 75th percentile type of outcome if you strip out some of those negatives. Again, like, you can't just strip out the negatives. But for me, it would be more concerning if the offense was completely stagnant with no mistakes. That would be something that would – so I don't know. I have faith in this offense for still being able to put up some big plays. And I don't know what's going on with Herbert, honestly. I was a huge fan of his in the offseason. I thought that maybe he could rise to be right there with Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes in the end of season conversation as being that guy. And we just have not seen it. They did not even have a very good success rate last week against a Raiders defense, which has been pretty easy to score against. So long story short, I'm pretty down on the Chargers, though. Probably more down than most people are, who still have hope.
Yeah, I have this projected at 1.25. And if it's, sitting on the key number of 3, there's some actual value there based on my numbers, but I haven't bet it yet because I do have that trepidation with the Chargers. And we did see the Dolphins, I think Mike McDaniel kind of, taking a trick from his former boss, Kyle Shanahan, staying on the West Coast in between road games. And so the normal travel disadvantage that you might see attached to the Dolphins, I don't think they have, they don't have it in full abundance.
Right. And the crowd advantage will be, like nil. So,
yeah. Exactly. So I'm showing some value on the Chargers with how much this line has moved, but I haven't bet it yet. I'm just a little trepidatious. One game that I didn't put in the outline that I want to talk about, because you mentioned, first of all, I think the Jets are an interesting team. Yeah. Great defense, potentially improving offense with I won't want to say emergence, but the insertion of Zach White into that offense. And then you mentioned it's the teams on the tails where it's a little bit harder, I think, to set a line and to evaluate, not like so much to evaluate what their actual potential is, but to evaluate how that translates into points scored within a game. Because there are some teams that have the potential to score a lot of points, but maybe they don't do it because they aren't put in the game state where they need to do it. And I think the Bills are, you have them power rated number 1. I have them power rated number 2. They are a team on that cusp on the tails. And so looking at this game in the offseason, it was -10. And the look ahead, it was -9.5. And even now it's -9.5. And I say that, not 9.5, obviously the Bills favored, but I say that, and actually this number is moving down. It is moving towards the Jets. It is 9 at some books, still 9.5 at FanDuel, but 9 at BetMGM and DraftKings, actually 8.5 at PointsBet. It would not surprise me if this number moves even more towards the Jets. And we saw similar movement last week with the Patriots, with the Patriots hosting the Bills, and the number continued to move towards them to kickoff. We could see this number continue to move. And I think it's wrong. I've got this projected above 10, but do you have any thoughts on this game?
I think I have the Jets a lot higher than you do, if that's the case, because my number is more on a neutral field, would be more around 6.5, 7. So then you add in whatever, I guess the Bills probably get a little bit of extra something. I haven't checked the weather conditions on this one here, but so if it's down to 9 now, because I'm seeing some 9.5s, I guess there is 9. Maybe it's going to go down to 8.5. That seems more fair to me. I guess I'm a little bit higher on the Jets than you are, it seems.
Yeah, there's a chance that I'm not giving them the boost that they deserve on offense from Mike White. There's a decent chance of that. By the way, got to do another plug here. Mention the Bills. We are giving away a free signed Isaiah McKenzie Buffalo Bills mini helmet from Pristine Auction. If you want a chance to win it, subscribe to the Betting Pros YouTube channel right now and comment below on the video. We will announce a winner on the channel in a future episode, so turn on those notifications.
What about a big hat? Can you give him those big Brian Robinson hats?
The question, the mini helmet, is it an actual mini helmet or is it a real helmet, but it's just sized to Isaiah McKenzie's head because he's,
First of all,
on the
no
smaller
little
side?
man shaming there. I thought you were gonna say, can you eat ice cream out of it? You know when you used to get like the little
Yes.
batting helmets? That was so money. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I think my mom has probably still saved those that I used to have and like put them somewhere in my room. Okay. All right. Thursday night football. Let's close it out with a discussion here. Thursday night football. Raiders. This number has moved to 6. Raiders -6 at the Rams. And the spread here, -6. The total is still 44.5. I mean, honestly, I don't know if I have all that much to say about this game. I have it lined exactly at 6. The total, it's hard to know what to do with this Rams offense now that Matthew Stafford is not there. But I mean, they weren't scoring that many points to begin with. How are you looking at this game?
Yeah, this is really, I mean, another one of those tough ones because there's no reason to tank for if you're the Rams because props to the Detroit Lions. You have the Rams pick, I believe, is currently sitting at number 3 or 4.
I think it's number 3.
Number 3. So the Lions, again, props to the Lions for having that there. So there's no reason for them to tank other than this could just be like, in the NBA where they have 1, 2, 3 Cancun. It could be one of those situations where they're just like, I just want to get the hell out of here and not have to worry about any of this stuff for the rest of the season. So, and just kind of go through the motions the rest of the time here. So my number is a little bit thinner than that. It's more like 4.5, but because of that variable that we're talking about here, that I don't really know what's going to be going on with the Rams there. It's not enough of a spread for me to think it's actionable.
Yeah. I mean, the real losers are the people who are going to watch in island games, the Rams for the next 4 weeks. Like they are in like
Wait, are any of those flexible
spots.
or not? Those are not flexible?
I don't think so. I think
geez.
so. We've got Thursday night football. I believe we have a Monday night football in there. There's one of these is the Christmas game. And then I think there's one more in there that is not flexible. Maybe it's flexible, but we're
Do you
going
think
to
like Amazon is regretting its investment now if Thursday night football? Because obviously we had Chargers Chiefs to start the season. Steelers Browns with that was actually, what's his name? It actually wasn't that bad necessarily. But who else do we have here? Bengals, Dolphins, when Tua, basically died on the field. Broncos, Colts. That was so bad it was almost good. Like it was so bad. I mean,
I don't think we're regretting it.
You don't think that? Yeah, I guess they're getting a foothold here. Like it doesn't really matter when you have more money than God, but it's been pretty ugly. Like it's been pretty bad as far as the schedule is concerned here. Like they do have Niners, Hawks, Seahawks next week. Jaguars, Jets, that'll be all right. Cowboys, Titans. Okay, so they got some okay ones coming, but it hasn't been pretty. Al Michaels is like past the point of pretending that he cares though for some of these games. So that's the thing that comes through for sure.
Yeah, that helps save it. All right, Kevin, thanks for joining us. For the people who don't know where to follow you, where should they find your work?
Yeah. First of all, people, get with it. If you don't know where to find me, at Kevin Cole, still PFF, as I mentioned before, at Kevin Cole PFF on Twitter. Unexpectedpoints.substack.com is my newsletter. So far, 100% publish rate, daily publish rate, 2 days. So far is going further. And the Unexpected Points podcast, which as of now, I may move that over to Substack also, but as of now is being hosted at Anchor. And I'm going to probably have an episode later this week. And then next week, starting with some interviews. It's a little bit on the nerdy side. I'm going to interview Chase Stewart. You know who Chase Stewart is? Football Perspective. Yeah. So he's like an OG in football analytics, meaning he was doing posts 10 years ago, which basically makes you an OG. So I'm going to try not to fanboy out a little bit too much there because I just think he's like a super smart guy and not a highly technical, CS stats major or anything like that. I think he's a lawyer.
He's a lawyer.
But he's been playing around with that sort of stuff for a while. And it's just amazing like how much insight and influence and how you can explore these different topics where you don't have to have super modeling and XG boost and all the sort of stuff there. You can really just put together some numbers and get some good perspective and everything. And he was posting daily for years and years and
I
years
know.
and years. It was amazing. Absolutely amazing. While being a lawyer.
I was going to say you're like my hit rate of 2 days in a row. I was thinking like that's some real
I'm like
Chase
a
Stewart
rookie
type
and he's Cal Ripken or something, that's I'm like, oh, I'll get there eventually someday. Yeah. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah, I remember he was, posting every day, and Fantasy Douche, aka Frank Dupont, from RotoViz back in the day. He would talk about, oh, did you read, what Chase Stewart wrote? So been looking at his stuff for a long time. All right, Kevin, thanks for being on the show. He's Kevin Cole. I'm Matthew Freedman. Matt F. the Oracle. Check out Betting Pros and Fantasy Pros for all my work, best bets, player props, fantasy favorites, player projections and rankings, and more. That is going to do it for this Week 14 Market Movement and Power Ratings edition of the Betting Pros Pod. If you like the show, rate and review on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for tuning in. Good luck and see you next episode.